You're listening to The Blind Chick, an Aftersight original podcast. We're telling you stories about strength, overcoming hurdles, and living experiences. We see who you really are. Blindness can be an adventure. Are you ready for the journey of a lifetime? We are. Hello, everybody. Jonathan Price here, the podcast producer at Aftersight. You're listening to The Blind Chick. Thanks so much for hopping on and spending a little bit of time with us. You're listening to part 2 with Denise Leigh, and this is actually part 2 of a 3-part series. Go back and listen to part 1 if you missed it. It was full of amazing stories and wonderful insights from Denise, Penn and Moses. But before we get into the show, I want to thank everybody for donating to Colorado Gives and donating to Aftersight, because without your generosity, we would not have been able to hit our goal. We actually made our goal, and we're so thankful to everybody who sacrificed and gave, because without those givings, we wouldn't be able to produce amazing content like we are doing right now. So thank you from the bottom of my heart and from the Aftersight staff and team. Thank you so very much. Next week, we're going to take a break from this little series, and we're going to have a special message from Penn and Moses for Christmas. So be on the lookout for that. But in the meantime, let's check out part 2 with Denise.
First thing she said to me was, "Mum, what's going on with Dimitri's eyes?" Because it was very, very noticeable. His nystagmus was particularly bad at this time. I think because he was going through a growth spurt, and you know when your kids are tired, if you have a nystagmus, if you're tired, it's always worse when you're tired.
Yeah.
Yes.
And I thought, well, this has come sooner than I planned, but I sat them all down and told them, and I said, look, I am really, really sorry that I may have passed this on to you. We've always known that you'd carry it and that you ran a risk of passing it on, but you'd have to be incredibly unlucky. But it's looking like it's dominant instead of recessive.
Okay.
And they'd taken blood. The geneticists had taken blood from me, and they were now searching for the damaged gene. They didn't know which one it was. And this can take months. So we were in limbo. The kids were great. They were amazing. They said, look, it can't be helped. You know, we're not going to put him in the bin. We love him. And we're not throwing you in the bin. It's not your fault. and they said, look, Mum, you know, look how you live. Look how you and Steph, because, you know, we'd got together and raised these teenagers at a really tricky point in their lives. Teenagers are hard work.
They are.
And they'd all got a great relationship with both me and their stepdad. I think because he'd never come in and said he was a dad replacement.
Right.
He'd always said, you've got a perfectly good dad, but I'm here to talk to if you need me. And, you know, I'm living in the house with you. So let's all get on together. And we were really lucky. And they'd got blind role models, although I did say to them, please don't start Googling, because that's just not a good thing to do. We were so lucky in the end that they got the results back by the February. So it was quite quick. Yeah. And we were called back and we were told that it was a fault on the CRB1 gene, which doesn't mean a great deal, but the interesting thing was, they said it is recessive, so it didn't change the kid's diagnosis at all.
Theirs, yeah.
However, what it did mean was that the fluke of nature had happened, and even though Stefan and I are not related, his heritage is completely different to mine. 3 of his grandparents are Ukrainian. And the other one that isn't Ukrainian is from Southern Ireland. She's from Dublin. So we weren't brought up in the same area. We are not related in the slightest. He carries the same damaged gene that I carry, which is just a freak of nature.
Yeah.
And so instead of having a 1 in millions of chances of passing on this gene, I went to 1 in 2, and of course, you know, we just got unlucky. if that's the way you look at it. Obviously, it wasn't the future I had planned for Dimmy, but he copes brilliantly. He's so good.
Yeah.
He's had a long cane since he was 2. He's in mainstream school because fortunately the Parliament passed a bill in 1979 which meant that mainstream provision had to be made possible for children with visual impairments and hearing impairments. So there was never a question about it. He was going to mainstream school. Stefan went through mainstream school, so, and so did I after I was removed from boarding school, after a brief spell of being homeschooled. It was a difficult few months, and I think the geneticists wanted to keep us and just poke us with sticks. They couldn't quite believe they couldn't quite believe that these two people who weren't related had found each other and made a baby. And that we both carried this gene. And interestingly, the damaged gene that we both carry has nothing at all to do with Stefan's eye condition. So he just got unlucky. And none of his brothers and sisters have presented with RP, and he's the eldest one of 10 children. So,
he's the eldest of 10. I'm number 9 of 10.
Oh, I see. Yeah, he's the eldest of a very big family. Like I say, they're just Ukrainian Catholics, Roman Catholics. So he's the eldest of 10
they
kids.
like the big fam. Yeah, it's interesting with genes and stuff because like my parents had 10 children and I was the only one that has Stevens-Johnson syndrome, which is in the United States, they consider it an adverse drug reaction. However, in the rest of the world, they do consider it hereditary. But out of the 10 children, I'm the only one that got it. And my mother had it as a child, which have impacted her vision and her hearing as well. And it's like, I mean, I really do consider myself the lucky one. One, it created a really neat relationship with my mom that none of the other kids had, And I feel that way
trauma bond over it.
Exactly. Well, Denise, how old were you when you, or maybe others, discovered your musical talent?
I wasn't from a musical family, although my mum was very, very interested in music and she had a really eclectic taste in music. And so I was always listening to music. It was I grew up in the 70s and 80s.
Yes.
When radio was a real thing. We listened to the radio. A lot of houses still had a piano, although we didn't. And I think my mum discovered that I was quite musical and that I had a really good memory for lyrics and for music as well. And I was at school. I'd started into a school which wasn't quite a mainstream school. It was a day school, but it was a school for children who had had a really bad start in school. So children who'd missed a lot of education because of illness. So there'd be children there with cystic fibrosis and children there with asthma and children who'd been born with a hole in the heart. There were 1 or 2 children with spina bifida. Children who'd spent time in hospital and and needed ongoing physiotherapy. Yeah. So I was the only blind child in this school, and I was got in pretty much as a favour to my mum who had a contact there. Because I'd been home educated after my parents had removed me from boarding school. And that really was the period when I really started to develop a love for music and music theatre especially. Because, I was supposed to be been taught maths and English and stuff like that at home. And yeah, I was doing a bit of reading. But to be honest, I was just watching a lot of telly and drinking a lot of Ribena. and going on a lot of walks, a lot of time spent with my dad. We'd go out and my dad was a big, I don't want to say poacher. I'm sure he had the rights to go. I think he did. But we used to go and catch rabbits and, because we were really, really poor. Because both my parents were unemployed by this stage. This was the late 70s and Margaret Thatcher was about to become Prime Minister and unemployment was just sky high. It was ridiculous. And so, because we live in quite a rural area, the unemployment was just high. And my mum wasn't working. My dad lost his job. And so we spent day in, day out together. And it was great in some ways. But in other ways, I really needed other children because I was an only child. Right. And so I did need other children. I needed the company of other children. Because although I was from a really big family, my mum was one of 6, my dad was one of 7, and they all had children. It's not like having your own siblings. You're always on the outside of the sibling groups. Yeah. And so my parents managed to get me into a day school, which was in a nearby town, about 7 miles away from home. And I'd go in and out by taxi every day, which was laid on by the school. And they discovered that I was quite musical. Somebody came in one day with brass instruments, and they got cornets and trombones and euphoniums. And I was too small for the trombone and the euphonium. So they gave me a cornet and they said, "Can you get a note out of it?" And I got a note out of it, and pretty quickly I was getting quite a decent note out of it. And then I figured out, the fingering with the 3 valves. It's all combinations of 3 fingers. And they said, take it home, spend some time with it and see how you get on with it. And I just loved it. It was, it became like an extension of my hand. It was always in my hand. And I made really quick progress to the point where I joined the brass band when I was about 12.
That's amazing.
And in a very male-dominated environment, I was this girl child, and they loved me. They took really good care of me. I got a great musical education and a good musical awareness, although it took me a very long time. I was talking about this on Saturday at a gig that I had. I grew up thinking that a lot of really famous operatic arias were actually written for cornet solo. And so I was so shocked to discover that Rusalka's Song to the Moon wasn't written for solo cornet. And I was like, what? There are words to this song?
Oh, my God.
Oh, Visidate. Yes, I know that. It's played on euphonium.
Well, how in the world did you go from a brass band to singing opera? Like, it's just amazing to me how...
I think because my mum would listen to Radio 3, BBC Radio 3, which broadcast a lot of opera at that time. And I would hear these really famous voices like Elizabeth Schwarzkopf and Maria Callas and Joan Sutherland, and I heard these voices and started to develop a real love for the arias they were singing, and wanted to know more about it. But I was completely unschooled, so I would learn an operatic aria by listening to it. So, for example, I've just said Visidate, which is from Puccini's Tosca. I didn't know that you had to be scared of a piece of music like that when I was 14. And so I learned it in my sort of Stoke-on-Trent Italian, and then went to the band and said, "Listen, can I sing this? Would you like to Would you like me to sing it at a concert? And they went, go on, give it a go. There's always somebody who can play the piano. So they got hold of the music, played it, and they went, oh my God, can you learn some more? And so, yeah, I went away and learned Verdi and Puccini and Mozart.
Wow.
And, you know, all the solos, the soprano solos from the Messiah, just by listening to them. And I'd take them, not knowing that they were terrifying pieces of music, and sing them. And then I was in a show at school when I was 16. I was nearly 17. And we did Joseph. And I pestered and pestered and pestered Joseph and the Amazing Technicolor Dreamcoat, Andrew Lloyd Webber and Tim Rice's first famous piece of collaboration. And I'd pestered and pestered and pestered to do this because I loved it. And they went, oh, go on then in the end. Let's do it just to shut her up, really. And I said, I'd like to sing the part of the narrator, if that's possible, but to make it fair, you know, we're going to audition for parts. And that was great fun. The whole school, you know, who was of the age to do this was so into it, and the auditions were so well attended. And I got the part of the narrator, and it literally changed my life, because there was somebody in the audience from something called the Gatsby Trust, which was connected. It was a trust fund connected with the Sainsbury's supermarket chain. And they wrote to one of my teachers at school and said, look, she's got something special. And we want to sponsor her with singing lessons.
Wow.
And do you think she'd be interested? And of course I bit their hand off. I said, would I? Yes. Let me think. Yes, please. and so that was that. I found a singing teacher, and she taught at a university, Keele University, which is about 7 or 8 miles from where I live. She's from Manchester. And this was 1988. And I still have singing lessons with Claire Hogan, who was the teacher I found. And at first she said, no, I think you're too young. And I said, well, please listen to me. And even if I'm too young, just listen to me and remember me. And then I can come back to you when I'm 20. You know, or 18, which seemed like a very long time from being 16.
Yes.
Yeah, when you're young.
And she had to listen to me, and she said, yeah, you're singing completely the wrong repertoire. Stop singing Puccini right now, before you hurt yourself. She said, yeah, I'll teach you, if only to teach you how not to do yourself harm. And for the first 6 months, she taught me how to breathe, and she taught me how to listen, and she taught me scales. She taught me how to sing slowly, because I was really good at singing quickly. But she needed to slow everything down, take me right back to the beginning, teach me how to breathe and how to support the sound. And yeah, I still see her now. In fact, I was with her 2 weeks ago, and she's 70 now, and she's amazing. And there's something really lovely about having known this woman for 36 years.
Yes.
And she knows my voice inside out. And she knows exactly, she's been so precious. Because 3 years ago, when I was diagnosed with breast cancer, I carried on singing. I didn't stop singing because it gave me something to focus on, because I was absolutely terrified that chemo would take my voice away.
All right.
And I carried on seeing her, even if I could only have lessons on Zoom, because I wasn't really able to travel on public transport, because I had no immune system. Right. And of course, we were just coming out of the pandemic as well. So people were still, people still had COVID, and had I caught COVID, then that delayed treatment, and any delay of treatment was going to be dangerous for my diagnosis. So I did have a lot of lessons with her online, but she is so good at nurturing voices, not only young voices, but voices which are tired and voices which are going through something traumatic like chemotherapy and radiotherapy. And, you know, because sometimes I'd be on steroids and I'd feel like I could take on the world. But then 2 days later, I'd be off the steroids and I'd crash. And vocally, that can be really damaging. And she was indispensable. I mean, I've always known how amazing she is.
Wow.
But to have her around at that time to just coax me through that. It's taught me just how amazing she is.
I was going to check in with you about your breast cancer. How are you today?
I'm fine. I go from scan to scan and from booby check to booby check.
Yeah.
I had half of my best boob taken off.
Oh.
Because you've always got one that's better than the other, and this was most definitely my best one.
We all do.
Yeah, my boobs are called Thelma and Louise, and Louise was the best one. Because I breastfed all the kids, and I used to say to them, which one is it now? Is it Thelma? Is it Louise? And it was the only way I could remember which one I'd given them last. Otherwise, I'd just be putting these poor starving kids on the same boob all the time. And so, it was Louise that I got the tumour in. And so they were so good. They were brilliant. I noticed a change in my skin, and I didn't find a lump. I just noticed a change. My skin looked like orange peel. And I contacted my GP, and he said, look, I can't see you face to face. I know you're going to struggle to take pictures, so leave it with me. And next thing, I got a request to go for a scan, for a mammogram. Yeah. And I then had to wait because I had to apply for an accessible session, you know, because I'd got my dog and everything, and because you're not given much time to undress and get into the right position. And they realised, you know, that as a blind person, I was going to need to be shown how to stand for the scan. And they took the scan on the 1st of July, and by the 15th, I'd had a letter saying, can you come back? Don't worry, 4 in 100 women are called back, so it probably is nothing. But I knew because I'd noticed a change, and my boob was uncomfortable, and I just knew that there was something not right. And so I went back 4 days later. It was all very quick. And they said, we'll give you an ultrasound. First of all, we'll have a look. They couldn't feel anything. We'll give you an ultrasound. And they had a look at at Louise, and then they checked under my arm, and I knew what that meant. I knew they were looking at lymph nodes, and because my best friend Tess had had cancer, breast cancer, 10 years before, while I was pregnant with. It was less than 10 years by then. It was about 7 or 8 years. While I was pregnant with Dimmy, my best friend had breast cancer. Yeah, and so that was. I went through that journey with her, you know, because I'd go to a lot of the appointments with her. And it was a really tricky journey for her, because while I was, you know, getting this dream of this baby that we tried for so many years, because we'd had IVF and we'd had IUI and nothing had worked. And then we'd put in for adoption, and immediately, of course, boom, I fell pregnant. Yes. Which often happens. And then just after I'd found out I was pregnant, Tess told me she got breast cancer. And so, you know, she was having treatment and her hair was falling out whilst I was having the best year of my life. Right. And she had her ovaries removed. And I remember saying to her, if you don't want to see me, Tess, I do understand that I'm walking around like this picture of health and everything, and you're having your ovaries removed. And she just went, oh, don't be stupid. Yeah, and that's a good friend. Yeah. And she was absolutely amazing. So she had her ovaries removed in the October. And then I had Dimmy in the December, because his birthday is in 6 days.
Oh.
And she was there, you know, for nearly up until the moment she took me into hospital when he was meant to be born at home, but things all progressed all skew-whiff, and he got the cord round his neck. And she's a paramedic, and she took one look at me and said, I'm taking you into hospital because you're bleeding and you shouldn't be. And she rushed me into hospital. Thank goodness she did. And she stayed with me right up until about half an hour before he was born. And then she said, look, I'm going to have to go because somebody's got to go and look after your other kids. and she went home, and she just missed him being born. But she was amazing. When I think about the fact that she'd just had an oophorectomy, you know, and she was going through, I now know what she was going through, because 8 years later, I was going through exactly the same.
Yeah.
And she was there. Again, she was there for me because she worked at the hospital, and because she was a frontline key worker, she was able to be there for my chemo sessions. So whilst most people were having to go in without their partners, and although I couldn't take Stefan with me, I could take Tess. And Tess would come in, I'd go to sleep, I'd go in on my own and fall asleep after they gave me antihistamine. And then I'd wake up and Tess would be there just brushing my hair or poking me awake because I was snoring. And at times I woke up and she'd say, wake up, you're embarrassing yourself. Or she'd just prod me and say, I've made you a cup of tea. And that was great. She'd drive me home. She'd stay with me. She'd tuck me in. But, you know, Tess had been through it, so she knew what I was going through. Yeah. And I just, I mentioned trauma bonding, didn't I, earlier in a jokey way, but yeah, we've been through something, and thankfully we've both survived. We both know what it's like to go through it. Tess's hair never grew back, and mine has. And again, I said to her, I'm really sorry, Tess, that, you know, your hair never grew back and mine's grown back better than it was before it fell out. And she just went, oh, shut up.
Yeah, exactly.
You've got enough hair for both of us. It doesn't matter.
You've been listening to The Blind Chick, an After Sight original podcast. Be kind to yourself. Be kind to others. It's good for your soul.